In the sultry heart of Savannah, Georgia, where the air hung heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine and the faint salt tang from the river, Lydia Beaumont sat in the waiting room of St. Joseph's Clinic on Abercorn Street. The year was 2025, but in Savannah, time moved like the Spanish moss swaying lazily from the ancient live oaks outside, slow, eternal, laden with secrets. At 68, Lydia was the epitome of Southern elegance, her silver hair swept into a loose chignon, her cotton dress adorned with delicate floral patterns that echoed the gardens of her antebellum mansion. She clutched her purse, fingers absently tracing the monogrammed initials L.B., a gift from her late husband Elijah on their 40th anniversary. The clinic was quiet that morning, the hum of an old ceiling fan mingling with the distant clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages touring the historic squares. Her phone vibrated in her purse, a modern intrusion in this timeless place. The screen lit up with Caleb, her only son. A warm smile creased her face. It had been too long since they'd spoken properly. "Hello, darling," she answered, her voice carrying the soft lilt of Georgia peaches. "Mom," Caleb replied, his tone sharp and impersonal, like a business email read aloud. "Sarah and I are pushing ahead with the startup in Charleston. We need quick capital for the app development. I've listed the mansion on the market, got a buyer lined up already, and sold the carriage house this morning. That old buggy fetched a good price. It'll fund the prototype. We'll wire you 30% or so, enough for a small condo downtown. Talk soon." The line went dead before she could utter a word. Lydia stared at the phone, the clinic's sterile lights reflecting in her widening eyes. Tears pricked, but she blinked them back, her southern breeding demanding composure. The mansion, her home on the edge of Forsyth Park, with its grand columns and wraparound porch where generations of Beaumonts had sipped sweet tea and watched the world go by. It wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was where Elijah had courted her with stories of Savannah's ghosts, where Caleb had taken his first steps on creaking hardwood floors. And the carriage house? Elijah's sanctuary, filled with tools and half-finished inventions now peddled like junk at a flea market. The nurse called her name, pulling her from the daze. "Mrs. Beaumont? The doctor will see you now." Lydia rose gracefully, though her knees felt weak. The exam was routine, blood pressure a tad high, cholesterol fine for her age. "Just rest more, dear," the doctor said with a pat on her hand. "Grief takes time." Elijah had passed 2 years ago, a sudden stroke in the garden while tending his roses. She found him there, peaceful under the moss, as if he'd simply decided to nap amid the blooms he'd loved. But now, as she stepped out into the humid October air, something shifted inside her. Caleb's call wasn't just a betrayal, it was a severance from the roots that had sustained her family for decades. Yet in that moment of hurt, a memory surfaced. Elijah's last gift, a gold locket he'd pressed into her hand days before his death. "Guard this, my love. If trouble comes, it will guide you." She tucked it away in her vanity, forgotten in the whirlwind of funeral arrangements and empty days. The walk home was a poignant journey through Savannah's storied squares. Tourists snapped photos of the fountains and monuments, oblivious to her turmoil. Flashbacks flickered like old film reels. Elijah proposing under a canopy of moss in 1977, his lawyer's suit rumpled from a day in court, his eyes twinkling with promise. Caleb's birth in 1987, the mansion echoing with his cries. Family Thanksgivings with pecan pies and laughter, Elijah spinning tales of Civil War ancestors who'd hidden treasures in the very walls. By the time she reached the mansion's wrought iron gate, resolve had hardened in her chest. Inside, the house welcomed her with its familiar creaks and scents, polished wood and faint lavender.
She went straight to her bedroom, the one with the four-poster bed where she'd shared 45 years with Elijah. The vanity drawer stuck slightly, but yielded the locket. It was heavier than she remembered, engraved with intricate vines symbolizing their intertwined lives. Opening it, she found not a photo, but a tiny key and a folded note in Elijah's neat handwriting. My dearest Lydia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and perhaps Caleb has lost his way. The key opens the safe under the carriage house floorboards. Inside, deeds to inns along the river, tech patents from my quiet nights in the workshop, repurposed plantation lands turned eco-farms, all in a trust. $10 million strong now. I hid it to protect you from worries and to test if love endures without fortune. Teach him, my love. Roots run deep. Forever yours, Elijah.
Tears streamed down her face now, unchecked. Elijah, the unassuming lawyer who defended Savannah's historic districts from developers, had been a genius inventor in secret. In the 90s tech boom, he'd patented software for legal databases, sold anonymously to big firms, investing the proceeds in Apple stock and local startups. The plantations, inherited from his family, he'd transformed into sustainable farms, profits compounding silently. And the inns? Charming bed and breakfasts along the Savannah River, including lofts in Charleston's emerging tech scene, where Caleb and Sarah lived, rent-free, unwitting tenants of their own downfall. Lydia wiped her eyes, a smile breaking through the sorrow. Caleb thought he left her destitute, but she was richer than he'd ever dreamed. Yet, she wouldn't lash out. No, she'd play the part of the frail widow, let him taste the bitterness of his actions, then offer redemption. It was the Southern way, grace with a steel spine. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the oaks, casting long shadows like ghostly fingers, Lydia poured herself a glass of sweet tea and sat on the porch. The moss swayed gently, whispering secrets only she could hear. Neighbors passed by, waving. "Evening, Lydia. Heard about the sale. Bless you hot." She nodded, her smile polite, her heart plotting. The next day, she called Mr. Hargrove, Elijah's old law partner, from a payphone downtown to avoid traces. "John, it's Lydia. I need discretion. Nullify the sales. Fraudulent power of attorney from my grief days. Transfer control to me." "Of course, ma'am," he replied, his voice grave. "Elijah prepared for this. It'll take weeks, but it's ironclad." Caleb called that afternoon, his voice softer but still distant. "Mom, the money's in your account, $50,000. Fair share, right? Sarah's excited about Charleston. We'll visit when settled." "Fair," she echoed, her tone neutral. "Safe travels, son." Inside, she laughed, a quiet, ironic chuckle. $50,000 from her own empire? How generous. Weeks unfolded like the slow unfurling of magnolia petals. Lydia maintained the facade, shopping at the local market with a modest basket, chatting with neighbors about downsizing. Aurora, her next-door confidant, brought casseroles. "That boy of yours, men and their ambitions. You'll be fine, sugar." All the while, Hargrove worked magic. The mansion sale was halted. The buyers backed out when title issues arose. The carriage house buyer returned it for a refund, no questions asked. Lydia drove the old carriage once, feeling Elijah's presence in the leather seats. News from Charleston filtered in via mutual friends. Caleb's startup, an app for historic tour bookings, hit snags. Investors balked at buggy prototypes, debts piled from loans against their loft. Sarah, the polished marketer, pushed harder, but cracks showed. Then the storm broke.
Caleb arrived unannounced one humid evening, suitcase in hand, rain slicking the cobblestones. The moss dripped like tears from the oaks. He looked haggard, his tech bro suit rumpled, eyes red-rimmed. "Mom, it's all fallen apart. The app crashed in beta. Investors sued. Sarah, she left, said I was dragging her down. Can I stay? Just till I get on my feet?" Lydia's heart ached. Her boy, broken like the child who'd fallen from the moss swing years ago. She pulled him into a hug, his wet coat soaking her dress. "Always, darlin'. Come in, dry off." He settled into his old room, the one with the slanted ceiling and posters of tech icons faded on the walls. Mornings they shared breakfast on the porch, grits, bacon, fresh peaches from the market. Caleb found work guarding in Savannah's historic sites, his hands blistering under the sun. "It's honest, Mom," he said one day, dirt under his nails. "Beats boardrooms." Conversations deepened. Evenings under the fireflies, he'd open up. "I thought success was in Charleston Lights, Mom. Sold our history for a dream that wasn't mine." Lydia listened, her heart softening but resolve firm. "Roots narrow, son. Your dad always said that." The twist came during a garden dig. A storm trum had uprooted a rosebush, revealing a buried box, locked, caked in mud. Caleb pried it open with a shovel. Inside, Elijah's photo, smiling in his lawyer's tie, and scribbled stock codes on yellowed paper. "Mom, this is Dad's writing. Patents? What does this mean?" Lydia feigned surprise, though she'd planted the box weeks ago, a breadcrumb from Elijah's safe. "Your father was full of surprises." Caleb's eyes widened as he pieced it. "These are tech patents, worth fortunes." She nodded, guiding gently. "He invented in secret, invested wise." Guilt shadowed his face. He worked harder, volunteering at the river inns, hers, unknowingly, humility blooming like the roses he replanted. Eviction notice arrived for their Charleston loft, anonymous company claiming ownership. Caleb panicked. "Mom, we're ruined. Sarah's gone, debts everywhere." That night, under fireflies, he confessed fully. "I treated you like a relic, Mom, sold your life for my ego. Dad would be ashamed." Lydia's cue. She led him to the carriage house at twilight, flashlight beams dancing like ghosts. Under the floorboards, the safe clicked open with the locket key. Documents cascaded, deeds, statements, $10 million in assets. Caleb fell to his knees, sobs racking him. "You knew, all this time, I left you with nothing, but you had everything." "Yes," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "Let you learn, son. Money's paper, family's eternal." He hugged her fiercely, tears soaking her shoulder. "Forgive me, Mama. I choked our roots with vines." "Forgiven," she murmured, the moss outside swaying in approval. Months later, transformation bloomed. The mansion became a heritage center for displaced families, programs on Southern history, eco-farms providing jobs. Caleb developed apps preserving oral stories free for schools. Sarah tried returning. He sent her away kindly. "Found my path." One twilight under the oaks, petals drifting like grace, Caleb passed the locket to her. "Roots saved me, Mom." She smiled, heart full. Love's the deepest secret. In Savannah's timeless embrace, betrayal had woven into legacy, a tapestry of forgiveness, as rich as the moss-draped land. Thanks for watching. Subscribe your own channel, Auntie's Voice Box.